Hello and welcome to Edinburgh Skeptics on the Fringe. Obviously, we're not in person because the virus is here still, despite what people seem to think in Edinburgh itself. So we're hosting online only for all our events, and we have free every Tuesday. So this week, next week, and the week after. Next week, we've got Karen from the Ferret, which is an investigative journalism organisation specialising in Scotland. And they've done lots of great work recently about various problems in Scotland alone. Recently, the most recent thing I saw was about GP data being sold off. Luckily, my practice wasn't in, but there were most Lothian practices were in, so maybe you want to check that for yourself. But they're coming up next week. Tonight, we have Kaszeta from nowhere himself. He wrote a book about chemical weapons and the Skripal case, and he's going to tell us some more about that. And just so you know, if you do want to donate for tonight's event, there should be a link at the bottom inviting you to donate to the PBH Free Fringe. They've helped us put on the Fringe for nearly a decade now, if not longer, and they help us run the Fringe events every year, and they're a great worthy cause, and lots of Fringe shows that you get a chance to see are also supported by them. So it's not just for us, it's for lots of entertainers. But now I'm going to hand you over to Dan Kaszeta to talk about chemical weapons and, Skripals and Russia. So enjoy.
Okay. All right, can you see this? All right, excellent. Thank you for that lovely introduction, and thank you to the Edinburgh Skeptics, who I've just now recently met online. Hopefully one day we can meet in person. Tonight I'm talking about Salisbury, the Skripal attempted murder case, nerve agents, and conspiracy theories, all kind of in a big, for lack of a better term, mashup. Just a little bit about myself. Right now, I am indeed not representing anybody but myself, but I come out of a 30-year background of dealing with things like chemical and biological weapons, pretty much all from a defensive standpoint. I worked in the U.S. Army, in the Chemical Corps. I worked in the Pentagon. I worked in the White House Military Office. I worked in the U.S. Secret Service, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now, I've written some books. I currently am a contributor to that little-known obscure website Bellingcat, and I'm a associate fellow at the Royal United Services Institute on a 3-year appointment. Enough about me, because this is really about disinformation, misinformation, conspiracy theories, and the Skripal affair. Now, if you want to know all about Sergei Skripal, I can highly suggest a book by Mark Urban called The Skripal Files. But I think it's fair to say that most people didn't know who he was until he wound up a bit ill on a park bench. He was not a household name, even for the people who are enthusiasts in the espionage arena. He doesn't rate like somebody like Oleg Gordievsky or somebody like that. But what he was a serving GRU officer. The GRU, as we all know now, is the military intelligence wing of the first the Soviet Union and then the Russian Federation. He actually ended up working as a double agent for MI6 during the last period of his career, and he ended up getting caught, getting jailed in Russia. And was exchanged in one of the last great famous spy swaps, sort of almost as an also ran, and he was sort of added to the list and was exchanged to the West, officially pardoned. And at this point, again, he falls off the radar, and it turns out he all along is living in Salisbury. All right. That's his house there. That's a photo I took some months after the incident. And on a place called Christy Miller Road, which is now sort of infamous in the outlying neighborhoods of Salisbury. He really becomes a household name after the 4th of March 2018, where his daughter Yulia, you can see there, bottom right, his daughter Yulia comes to visit him from Russia. Flies into Heathrow, and joins him out in Salisbury. And eventually they are found, in a quite serious state of illness and disability on a park bench at 4:15 p.m. on the 4th of March on a quite cold day. This map you see here is basically a reconstruction of their itinerary from the point at which they parked to the Sainsbury's car park to, going to the Mill Pub, to the Zizzy, and then being found on a park bench at around 4:15. Okay. Initially, it wasn't understood what was wrong with them, but quite quickly it was determined at the hospital that they were suffering from something called organophosphate poisoning. That's where the sort of the story arc of Sergei and Yulia Skripal comes into my life, because the organophosphates are a category of chemicals that are known both as conventional pesticides and as illegal chemical warfare agents. Things like sarin and VX that and stuff like that are organophosphates, and it's not like they were out on a farm somewhere. There's not necessarily a really logical, clear reason why that they should be suffering from serious organophosphate poisoning on a bench in downtown Salisbury. Both of them, on a Sunday afternoon. There's the pub. There's the pub where they had a drink earlier. That's not the park bench, but it's very the park bench, in the best I can reconstruct, the park bench in the rear, on the rear left on that photo I took, is the replacement for the contaminated park bench, which is probably still somewhere in a secure evidence storage facility somewhere in this country. What happens is, and I'm not going to steal the thunder of other presentations that are probably still available to you and my good friends at Bellingcat. They ended up doing some very interesting work reconstructing an itinerary of several individuals who turned out to be actually quite senior officers in that GRU, that Military Intelligence Service. So what we have here, pictured here, we have both old and new photographs of these particular individuals having arrived at Gatwick Airport. And there's a picture of the two looking in absolute bafflement at a ticket barrier in Salisbury the day prior to the poisoning. Clearly, what seems to have happened is that they arrived. They arrived. They went to Salisbury on a reconnaissance, came back the next day, and conducted this poisoning. Now, the whole chain of events whereby Chapiga and his colleague were identified is really kind of beyond the scope of what I'm going to talk about. That's a whole interesting story there, and you can look at some really fascinating posts on the Bellingcat website to see how these guys were basically outed as having been in Salisbury both the day before and the day of this poisoning, which is, even if nothing had happened to Sergei Skripal, that's a remarkable coincidence. And yeah, there they are originally arriving at Gatwick Airport, on the Friday night, Salisbury. Here they are walking up the road in Salisbury on the actual day of the poisoning. Okay. Interestingly, when they got off the train at Salisbury Station, they, if I could describe it for you, I probably should have taken a photo of it. Sort of the way out of the car park, and the way you walk out, you kind of go right towards the cathedral in this town center, or you go left and under the train tracks to sort of the outlying bits of town where there's little or nothing of tourist interest. But they went left; they didn't go right. This led to a massive investigation and also quite a serious round of medical treatment. Right, as gradually it comes, it comes out that not only were they poisoned by a nerve agent, but a quite exotic nerve agent of particularly Russian provenance, something called a Novichok. Now, for those of you who can't see necessarily well, top left there is two police technicians, or they could be military. You can't. There was a lot of military support for this effort. can't tell just by looking at the photograph, wrapping up the afflicted park bench. Bottom right is Salisbury District Hospital main entrance, where Sergei and Yulia spent a very long time in a quite intensive medical treatment. Just to explain these Novichoks, because this is an often abused term. Novichok really is a slang term for a family of chemical compounds that was developed in the 1970s and 1980s in the then Soviet Union's clandestine chemical warfare program. And these were nerve agents that were meant to be product improvements over the existing earlier generations of nerve agents. And again, if somebody wants to know more about that, I can talk about it later, or it's mentioned in my book. Almost instantaneously, once the idea came out that there was a nerve agent involved, and that this was a Russian defector, the rumors, the innuendos, the conspiracy theories started to fly. So I want to get really into the heart of my really get into the heart of this whole issue by giving a little bit of a guided tour through the what I would call several categories. One is misinformation. Misinformation is just something that is not right. Now, misinformation could be quite innocent, because we're talking about subjects that people don't necessarily understand. Who is this Skripal guy? What's a nerve agent? Not everybody understands these things, and nor should they. Okay, so there is misinformation, and there's disinformation, which is incorrect information that is spread deliberately on purpose, okay, for some reason. And then there are conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories effectively are for lack of a better term, a alternative worldview, or a alternative view of a set of circumstances to explain something in a way that is not necessarily the conventional explanation. Somebody else will probably come up with a better, a definition of conspiracy theory than that. And the three get very intermingled. It can be very hard to tell where, misinformation leads into disinformation, or does disinformation cause somebody to go look something up and just get the facts wrong and just muddy the waters by not getting things right. But one of the things I want to sort of talk through is a couple of different themes that emerged in the aftermath of the Skripal event. What I have here on the slide here are 3 tweets I found quite soon after the event. They date from late March, early April 2018. So this incident is only a month old at latest. Various things like, there is no antidote to Novichok. If they were exposed to a near lethal dose, they'll die instantly. Or that there is no cure. It's the deadliest poison in the world. So obviously it couldn't be the Russians, because they would be dead. Or if they survived, is an absolute miracle. This stuff, I put this up here because, the top 2 could be just misinformation. It might just be people who just don't understand. The bottom one is actually got a quote in there from a Russian media organization that might actually be disinformation. And what's the real story here? I'm going to sort of stick a harpoon in this particular theory. Okay, what you have here is a extract from an official NHS document. All right, it is a resuscitation guideline, basically, for somebody who is in possible need of cardiac resuscitation. All right, and the other picture here is a vial of atropine. Okay, now where am I going with this? Nerve agents, even the more exotic, strange, weird ones, or the very pedestrian ones like malathion and parathine that used to be widely used as pesticides, they all cause the same medical problem. They have different structures, but the problem that they cause in the human body is all fundamentally the same problem. And there is an antidote. And the antidote is atropine, which comes originally from it's now synthetic mostly, but it originally was extracted from the belladonna plant. Atropine's in every A&E department in this country. Atropine is in every ambulance for a variety of reasons, one of which is the bit I have circled down there, where the NHS guideline, at least in the various ambulance service trusts, is consider atropine for symptomatic and absolute bradycardia. Now, I'll unpack what that means. Bradycardia is a fancy word for, slow heart rate. And guess what? Both Sergei and Yulia they both had very depressed heart rates. All right, so atropine's in the medical protocols. They got atropine, and atropine turned out to be what saved them. Okay, because atropine is an antagonist to the buildup of chemicals in the body that the nerve agents cause. So, there is no claim anywhere that is substantiated that says these Novichoks are the deadliest in the world. For that, we would need human toxicology data, and we just don't have the studies. I suspect they aren't the deadliest in the world. The idea that there is no cure, no antidote, anything like that, that's basically nonsense. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean anybody is necessarily expected to know that, but that sort of idea starts to muddy the waters. Well, how do they survive if there's no antidote? Or how do they know what antidote to use? Or, these sort of theories play a little bit on medical ignorance. Okay. Another thing is, one of the reasons why Sergei Skripal and his daughter got immediate assistance was one of the people walking by was the chief nurse of the British Army. Okay. And that seemed to be an amazing coincidence. There's a very senior nurse. How did that possibly happen? Okay. Much has been made of that particular theory. I think, if this were any other part of the country, that might be a little bit odd. But 20% of the British Army is quartered in 20% of the British Army is quartered in Wiltshire. Okay. Senior military medical staff have to live and work somewhere. This particular person happens to live 8 miles away from Salisbury. Salisbury is the big city center. Okay, so and if you look at the medical bits of the British Army, that percentage is even higher than 20% in Wiltshire. So, and Salisbury and Swindon are the two big cities in Wiltshire. None of this is terribly surprising. Okay. Is it a coincidence? Yes. Is it enough of a coincidence to really start to hang much of a conspiracy theory on? I don't know. Okay. You get lots of other sort of themes in the conspiracy theory world. Outside Salisbury is a place called Porton Down. Porton Down is a little bit infamous in that is where the offensive chemical and biological capabilities of the British military, when such a thing existed, were headquartered. It's a widely believed conspiracy theory that, the British military still secretly does offensive chemical and biological research. In actuality, it doesn't. Got out of that business a fair bit ago, decades ago. But the fact is, Porton Down is not that far outside of it's northeast of Salisbury. So the proximity of Porton Down is what leads to this one particular tweet here. This one's even, hashtag Salisbury misinformation, hashtag just for our convenience here, rather ironically. And so ideas were around like, was it a leak from Porton Down? Or was it Porton Down that did it? As if to the idea that, if scientists researching on deadly chemicals could only really do it within sort of bicycle radius of their establishment, or a leak, because this particular substance that was used, the A234 as it's called, did it, I don't know, leak out of a jar in a cabinet in a room under a fume hood, out of a secure building on a secure compound, and magically fly 8 miles as the crow flies through the air and land exactly on the door handle of a guy who just happens to be a defector from the GRU. I mean, I just don't see how the mechanics of that would have worked. But the proximity of Port and Down was certainly convenient for people wanting to either search for other explanations or foist other explanations. Bottom left is a tweet in reply to Elliot Higgins. Very often it's a common trope in these things to blame MI5, MI6, the CIA, Mossad, blame somebody else. These sorts of tweets are, legion. They're everywhere. Top right is an interesting one. Was the idea that it was a fentanyl overdose. I never know where to put the emphasis on the syllables there. It's the old joke. Where do you put the emphasis on the syllable? Is it fentanyl? Is it fentanyl? Anyway, one of the early theories that was going around before even nerve agents were mentioned in the press. I mean, literally the morning of it, were these people taking drugs? Did they have a drug overdose? That was pretty quickly ruled out by medical authorities, but it keeps coming up as one of these explanations. Okay, and then the bottom right, there always are the true. You guys think you're the fringe of the Edinburgh Fringe, but the true lunatic fringe. There's always somebody who's going to blame the Freemasons, somebody's going to blame the Zionists, or you get seriously into the aliens and the lizard people theories. That stuff is all out there if you really want to go look for it. The shape-shifting reptilians did it. I don't even take that stuff terribly seriously because it's so far out there that it's hard not to laugh at some of it. Now, this is where we get interesting stuff. This is when we get out of the plausibly misinformation, somebody's just got an idea and just has it wrong, to the speed and frequency at which stories were being pumped out by Russian state-owned or state-directed media. And I'm going to go through these. I'm going to go through a lot of these here because it turned out there were a lot. Very quickly, this whole thing happened on the 4th of March, but 4 days later, on the 8th of March, all of a sudden, a bunch of theories come out in different media venues, sometimes in the same one. Was it an accidental exposure due to the proximity to Port and Down? There's the accident theory that somehow this leak happened and just happened to, not affect anybody else. Suicide, addiction and stress are common among defectors. So really, was this a suicide attempt? Okay. There was untrustworthy or complicit testing at Port and Down. This was pushed through Russia Today. Was Sergei Skripal a test subject? Okay. An accidental overdose. Again, this is of something. This sort of feeds into the fentanyl argument. Is the whole thing just a provocation made up to stoke Russophobia? All right, Russia won on 8th of March. Now, some of this is not for an international audience, I should say. Some of this is going out to a domestic audience in the Russian state media. And some of it is going out to international audiences, but the two bleed over quite a lot, because what you see is various social media accounts picking up on the stuff in Russian language and translating it either correctly or badly, and then pumping it out in other languages for, presumably for actually active disinformation purposes. But I can't say that everybody that found one of these stories is, oh, that's interesting, and tweeted is complicit in disinformation. Some people just say, oh, that's interesting, I'll retweet that. Okay. the Skripal assassination could have been a ploy to frame Russia and undermine Putin by a rival faction. That one I couldn't even find when I tried to find an archive footage of it. That one's a little bit iffy. Now, Russia won on the 11th of March. The Brits did it. If you carefully consider who benefits, it's the British. It's simple Russophobia. Okay. The next day, it was the Americans. The Americans did it to destabilize the world, inflame Russophobia, and force the UK to isolate Russia. Okay. Then the next day, the Ukrainians did it to frame Russia. Now, this is all the same media outlet, Russia One, which is their equivalent sort of BBC One. You know, I mean, they can't all be right. You know, a British American Ukrainian, you know, conspiracy, you know, for multiple different reasons, but to frame the Russians. This gets into the whole. We start getting into the concept here. Stuff is just getting pushed out in this stuff. It's, you know. These things cannot all be true, and they start getting more ridiculous. It starts to, they start scraping up the barrel here. The British are responding like this to distract from Brexit. That was actually Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister. It was the mother-in-law to be. That was we have a family dispute. Somehow a mother-in-law has got access to this secret nerve agent. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the 17th of March in Russia says, well, Russia's made huge progress in the war in Syria. They're trying to undermine our role as a peacemaker. This is ironic in several levels because Russia had been turning a blind eye to the use of chemical weapons in Syria, and, you know, had not been acting as a peacemaker by any stretch of the imagination. So they're trying to, you know, push multiple themes in one statement there. Okay. Which leads to another interesting point that different, you know, a single statement or a single theme might have multiple objectives. And wait, there's more. Skripal was smuggling these as chemical weapons. Okay. That was in Pravda on the 17th of March. Then on the 17th of March, you know, a spokesman said, well, only the UK, the Czechs, the Swedes, or the Slovaks, and somebody in the Slovak Ministry of Foreign Affairs woke up in the shock reading that, have this weapon. That's kind of an interesting mix of countries there. Zvezda, which is the newspaper of the Russian MOD, it's their you know, Army Times, effectively, claimed it was a very small drone that did it. Again, that's an interesting one. On the 18th of March, President Putin declared that they destroyed all their chemical weapons, so it couldn't have been them. And he also made a statement later on in the same presentation that if it was done by the military, the people would have died on the spot. Getting back to this, you know, world's deadliest substance, yeah, instant death, you know, none of which is actually technically true about nerve agents. And, you know, even if you get a fatal dose of nerve agents, you know, it's 6 or 8 or 10 minutes to die. It's, if you're absorbing it through the skin, like Sergei and Yulia were, because they got it off of the door handle, it's literally up to a day before you die. But anyway, this theory is pushed out there. Oh, Bill Browder. Bill Browder, ever since he wrote his book Red Notice, he's public enemy #1 as far as the Kremlin is concerned. So Russia once said, oh, Bill Browder did it. Some unspecified terrorist did it. That was again these Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokespeople in Moscow, you know, clearly having to come up with, you know, better ideas on this thing. Now, this is a lot of stories. Now, the issue is they can't all be true. I mean, is it possible one of them is true? Possibly. Some of these are all related on the similar themes, but, you know, they can't all be true. They can't even possibly be expecting people to literally believe all of these. So this raises the question, what's really the point here? And I think the point here isn't necessarily that they want anyone to particularly believe any one of these stories, or if they do, they don't necessarily want or even believe that a lot of people are going to believe any particular one. This is more to muddy the waters. This is this, because they view, from an information warfare perspective, the perpetrators of this deed, they don't view it as victory. Say, oh yeah, the Slovaks did it, okay, because eventually that would crumble upon further investigation. What they really want people to say is, oh my God, lots of things could have happened. This is all very complicated. We'll never know. That's what they view the victory. That's the victory state. That's the desired end state of this sort of disinformation campaign with all these different things. They're not seriously trying to convince us all that it was a drone. They are throwing, 15, 20 different lines of inquiry out there to seriously muddle the chain of thought here, throw up a bunch of smoke, a bunch of debris, cause chaos on social media. And there really was chaos on social media. My Twitter feed was on fire for weeks and weeks and weeks. If you don't follow me on Twitter, you discover I am the king of nerve agent Twitter for a reason. It's because of this stuff. All right. Oh, but wait, there's even more. 13th of March. It was all Theresa May's fault. Theresa May herself invented Novichok. That was another one. I think they have female prime ministers who were chemists. That one was wrong. And Margaret Thatcher was a chemist. English gentlemen kill those that they consider beneath them. That's another good one. The US invented Novichok. Digging right into history, the UK poisoned Ivan the Terrible. That's an interesting one because it wasn't the UK at the time, and that really is a stretch to say that the English poisoned Ivan the Terrible. So the idea was that somehow, because of that historical precedent, the UK intelligence services were involved, etc. The UK did it to justify high military spending because they need a major enemy. Okay. And finally, one of my favorite ones, the BZ red herring. This is, Sergei Lavrov says, literally, you can see it right there. Swiss lab says BZ toxin used in Salisbury, not produced in Russia, was in US and UK service. BZ was an incapacitating chemical warfare agent made during the Cold War. And the US didn't invent it and make it. Well, they didn't invent it, they invented the mass production process. But this is like a bunch of things all in one salami here, all rolled up. First of all, BZ isn't a toxin. Toxins are naturally occurring poisons. BZ actually works the opposite way to nerve agents. If you give somebody suffering from BZ atropine, you're really going to mess them up. The Swiss lab never said that. No BZ was found. And oh, by the way, BZ was in fact produced by the Russians or the Soviet Union during the Cold War. They just called it something else. They called it, I think it was substance 78. I'd have to look that one up. Now we have an interesting situation as the situation evolves. 30th of June, 2018, two people, Dawn Sturgis and Charlie Rowling, get exposed to the same chemical from a device. You can see it exactly there on the right, a perfume sprayer. Both are seriously overcome by the nerve agent. Dawn Sturgis eventually dies. Charlie Rowley makes a recovery. And I'm not going to talk through each one of these because I'm cognizant of getting a long time. But again, within a similar period of time after this event, it seems to take a week for the talking points to get worked out and distributed and circulated around the various media organs. Again, the US did it to scapegoat Russia. They did it to help with a Trump visit. I'm not sure how that would have worked out. Distracting from Brexit, Porton down. UK did it to distract from Russia's World Cup hosting. It's linked to UK domestic terrorism. It could be from anywhere in Europe, etc. A dirty political game by political forces in London, or a large-scale political provocation. We're back to the drug thing. It was contaminated drugs. It wasn't really Novichok. A former Porton Down employee did it, and the UK did it to disrupt a Russia-US summit. Okay, again, this is all within sort of a week, 10 days after the event, and this is at the point at which I stopped having the will to live, and I stopped cataloging these things. And again, we're back to this. Like I said here, the nerve agents with mythical properties. Now, I'm going to apologize. You've seen these slides again. I'm looping through this again, so to see where this stuff intersects. Mythical properties, the atropine as an antidote, the army nurse, and all this stuff. Now, and again, somebody did this lovely cartoon. This is really good for debunking the Novichok leak scenario out of Porton Down. Escaping from the jar, out of the room, out of the building, out of the compound, flying 13 kilometers to Salisbury. Okay. So, I mean, where am I going with all this? I'm going to skip ahead. One of the first things that anybody's going to ask me, I'm going to head off a question here, because this eventually gets down into motives, and I want to spend 5 minutes here talking about motives, because I do realize I have about 10 minutes to talk here, but it's because people really want to know. I mean, why would there be all this fuss? Okay, why? If Sergei Skripal, who smoked, he drank, his health wasn't great, he could have been run over by a car. He could have been stabbed in a mocked up sort of robbery type situation. He could have just quietly died in his bed of a heart attack, and we wouldn't have all this stuff. It would probably go largely unremarked. You wouldn't have people putting out theories about drones and Bill Browder doing it and UK poisoning Ivan the Terrible. This is an awful lot of waste of oxygen, a waste of electricity, a waste of energy. So why bother? Okay, why bother with all this? And why use something exotic as Novichok, something that really, like the polonium that was used against Mr. Litvinenko, has, figuratively, has got fingerprints in a path leading, leading to places. In the case of the polonium, literally traces of it on the airplane seats where the guys flew, the spies that did it. In the case of Novichok, this very sort of down at heel hotel in East London, where these two GRU guys stayed, a trace of Novichok in that hotel room. So, is it sloppiness, or is the method the message? Now, I'm going to make this is the closest I get to sort of conspiracy theory promulgation myself. I'm not going to call this a conspiracy theory, because I'm just going to say this is a hypothesis. I'm going to predicate this by saying, first of all, a police state, like Russia is, that has sophisticated security services that do indeed have a track record of violence against people they don't like. And that's indisputable in the historical record. They're fully capable of doing something like this, and they're fully capable of doing things for multiple reasons. Okay, so it's eminently possible that the attempted murder of the Skripals is meant to serve several purposes. And when you start looking at that, the apparent sloppiness, these two guys relatively easily rumbled by a bit of belly cat work, obviously from the GRU. Maybe this is not sloppiness. Maybe this is a feature, not a bug. All right. So the idea is to make sure that everybody knows that Moscow is doing this, as opposed to, oh, gee, some old guy living next door fell over dead last night. The ambulance came and took him away. Okay. That instills no terror in any other defectors. Okay. So one of the possible motives here is revenge. I mean, historically, it's well known that the GRU is a vengeful employer. So this is the GRU cleaning up its own history, and Skripal worked for the GRU. So is that possible? Putin himself famously dislikes disloyalty and defections. Skripal himself was easily found. He wasn't hiding. Some of the higher priority defectors are much deeper hiding. He was on the electoral roll. It didn't take the entire intelligence services of the Russian state to find Sergei Skripal. So was there revenge? And if so, I mean, is it like the Navalny thing? Is it like the Litvinenko thing? Is it really about the guys who got poisoned, or is it to discourage the next one? Is it to discourage the next Navalny? Is it to discourage the next, discourage the next Skripal, to prevent them? And I mean, is it possible that they really did want to provoke some sort of reaction from the UK government? Did they? I mean, was it a Russian plot partly intended to force a crackdown on Russian money in London, because not all of that Russian money is pro-Putin? So, I mean, these are all possibilities. And so, when you look at it from this sort of lens, these sorts of conspiracy theories, they're meant to confuse. They're not meant to convince. Okay, they're meant to muddy the waters to the extent that instead of plausible deniability, there's implausible deniability. It's a wink and a nod. Yeah, we did it. We're not going to say we did it. And we're going to cause a lot of smoke and noise and confusion. And push a lot of this stuff. And it's genuinely difficult to tell in the midst of this stuff where the deliberate disinformation campaigns that come straight out of a Russian media source, where do they stop, and where does the organic stuff come? I mean, if you get into sort of the David Icke enthusiasts and the lizard people stuff, they're organic. They grow up like mushrooms after a rainstorm, but fortunately, few people take them seriously. And there's always going to be somebody blaming Israel or blaming the CIA for anything bad that happens in the world. It's like it's an axiom in conspiracy theory circles. Some of that is just noise that's going to happen. But in this particular case, with the Skripal situation, we have what I think is a textbook case of state media organs. Let's go back and look at some of this. Deliberately turning up the heat, deliberately amplifying stuff, deliberately giving material that is then multiplied and spread out. Now, I'm not the greatest at doing sort of network analysis. There are guys who are better at that. Who's forwarding what Facebook post, who's tweeting, who's retweeting what, and stuff. And this stuff does, I don't like using the word going viral in the middle of a pandemic, because can we retire that word, please? But this stuff takes on a life of its own and starts spreading itself around. It would only take 2 or 3 of these particular lines of Russian media put to start the wheels moving and push it further. But the fact that there are 38 or 40 different narratives out there, and I even forgot 1 or 2. There was the bad fish narrative, that somehow Zizi is serving fugu fish from Japan at 200 pounds a serving. I mean, that one was easy to ignore, but so you start looking at this from the perspective of taking a situation that is already going to have an organic growth of I'm not going to say hysteria. Hysteria is a much maligned, misused word. A lot of controversy anyway, because a dangerous substance has been used in a crowded city. Okay, all right, and there will always be people who sort of try to find an explanation for that isn't the official line. And so I'd like to conclude by saying that this is actually a textbook story of really how this flies. Okay, and you can see this being replicated now with the Navalny situation. I haven't really talked about Mr. Navalny, but he's also been poisoned. And so you get similar amounts of things going on there. You've got a similar amount of stuff going on every time chemical weapons were used in a major public incident in the Syrian war. So unfortunately, my work is cut out for me. Here I am, the king of nerve agent Twitter, but every time that this stuff comes up, it comes packaged, wrapped up, embroiled in disinformation, and it's the world that we live in. Now, I'm going to share this. I have written about this in a book. My book is actually a history of nerve agents. It's a whole category from the very beginning, from a tiny little Calabar bean in West Africa all the way to I would say Navalny, but Navalny got poisoned after the book got done. But hopefully, the paperback edition that comes out soon will have Navalny in it. But I talk at length about the Skripal stuff in here. I have a special deal with my publisher. If you use Toxic 25 on the publisher's website, you get 25% off. So you'll get it for 18 something instead of 25 pounds. And because I can't do a book signing in person here, make note of that email address there, or my Twitter handle. If you email or tweet me with a photo of your book, I will send you a nice PDF of a book plate, yes, in lieu of signing it. So what kind of deal is that? That's a great deal. And I think I have used my time almost exactly to the minute. Am I right on that?
Seems perfect. We can go straight to questions if you're ready.
Yeah, let's go straight to questions. I'm gonna stop sharing my slides. Is that what I'm supposed to do?
That would be great if you could.
Okay.
We'll make a post about the book.
Okay.
So everyone can see it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That was great. I'm a bit of a Russian, obsessive. So yeah, it's certainly in my wheelhouse, and we've got quite a few questions in. One thing I did want to mention when you were talking about the way that Russia did this and the way that it was so overt. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they can do things covertly, like a book I absolutely loved, well, not loved, but found really interesting reading was From Russia with Blood, which was done by the BuzzFeed journalist who did a big investigation into all these Russian murders on UK soil. And so many of them were, low-key enough to be swept under the rug or chalked up to something else. So they can do it secretly if they want to.
Yeah.
And obviously I was thinking about with Litvinenko, was the same kind of conspiracyism around then, or is it the internet that fuels this?
Well, I think the Litvinenko was pre-Twitter, pre-Facebook, that raises the interesting issue of social media and conspiracy theories, because conspiracy theories are, 30, 40, 50 years ago, you'd have to make a real effort to go find a like-minded person. I remember when I was a kid in the Phoenix, Arizona metropolitan area, and there was that one really, really dodgy far-right bookshop that, guys with brown shirts would meet in the back of it. And those guys clearly had to make a go effort in dark of night to go meet there. If you think the Queen is a shape-shifting lizard, you're going to find a lot of people, within 10 minutes on Twitter and Facebook. So you're going to find a ready-formed community you can latch right into. So it's not that conspiracy theories and disinformation, misinformation didn't happen. They happened at a much slower rate. Okay.
Yeah, who was you saying about the lizard people? It just reminded me, obviously, Wogan put David Icke on his show to reveal all that. So that was like primetime BBC in the early 90s, I think. So yeah, it has managed to get out there.
Yeah, exactly. Social media serves as an accelerator of an already existing phenomenon. In the age where not as many people are buying books and buying newspapers and buying magazines, where used to be the great way in the old days, where at the time the Soviet Union to spread disinformation was to do things like bribe and coerce journalists to slip stuff into articles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
well, that was the old way. You'd slip it into the Indian Times or something like that.
Yeah. All right.
Right. So to the questions from other people, because I can talk to you later. But Mike Ross has asked, might be out of your area of expertise, but if these two were senior, highly trained intelligence agents, why did they make such a pig's ear of the operations and expose themselves as much as they did?
Well, I think I'm thinking back to what I said, that actually, the point was to be a bit brazen. Okay, I personally think I'm with you on that. If if they wanted Sergei Skripal to die in his sleep, it was eminently possible that they could have arranged that. I think if the Russian state really is going around killing various Russians here, often quietly, that's a controversial assertion. Some of them really are very much gray areas. Just once in a while, you need one that's clearly an example to sort of shed some light on those other ones and cause some doubt. And maybe half of those ones, maybe they really did die of heart attacks and whatnot. But now we just don't know, do we? Okay, so a brazen one like this, and it turns out that this is not the only brazen one. These same guys, you look at Bellingham, these exact same guys, I mean, literally the same guys, were pulled off a brazen poisoning of a guy in Bulgaria, caused a fire at an ammunition depot in the Czech Republic. Sometimes I think their policy is to use the blunt end of the blunt end of the spear instead of the pointy one. Okay, for lack of a better metaphor.
I do think it helps feed the conspiracy theorists, though, because they kind of assume that they should be so highly trained that they shouldn't get found. And then when they are, they kind of assume it's because someone made it look like it was Russia rather than just Russia. So Bellovision asks, did they even mean to kill them, or was it just a publicity stunt? Which I guess we kind of covered, but.
Well, you see, the thing is, it's eminently possible that they could have died. Okay, the poison was on the door handle of their house. Okay, and if they had just gone in and ordered a delivery pizza and sat there on their own couch and watched TV, it's very possible they just would have died and nobody would have known for days. The fact that they instead of they basically went into the house, dropped off baggage, and went out again immediately to the pub, and thus meaning that over the slow period of time while the poison is absorbed through their skin, they had the good fortune to actually get ill in public where somebody else could see it. So it could go either way on this. But I also say with that sort of layers of motivation, none of that requires Sergei Skripal or his daughter to be dead for it to put panic into others. So, and to be honest, the same thing with the Navalny thing, because one of the things I talk about in my book is the long-term neurological and psychiatric effects of exposure to nerve agents can be pretty bad. Nobody really comes out and says it, but I'll say it right now. Maybe one of the reasons we don't see Sergei Skripal, on the television talking about this, he might be quite badly off. Okay, even quite low doses of nerve agent cause anxiety, depression, insomnia, stuff like that, memory loss. So this could be a very bad gift that keeps on giving over a long period of time, and that's, for some people, that's more terror-inducing than a very quick and silent bullet to the head.
It certainly would upset me more. You're around to know about it. Sarah has asked, Sarah Hearn, what was the purpose of the bottle that killed Dawn? From what I understand, it was in a sealed box and found in a dumpster several months later, so unlikely to be the source of the original attack.
I can speculate on that. I don't know, of course, but my speculation is that probably the killers themselves didn't travel into the country with the poison with them on their persons, and we do know now that they rendezvoused with other people at various points. We also know that the GRU is, if a little bit sloppy, also a bit thorough. My hypothesis is that perfume sprayer was stashed in a dead drop somewhere as a backup supply. Okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was in a, the typical, hollowed out tree in a park somewhere or something like that.
I've seen the Americans, I know.
Yeah. I mean, this, you read memoirs of these GRU spies, and there's some really good ones out there. They spend an awful lot of their time reconnoitering, finding dead drops that they can leave messages in, or leave small packages in, or a parcel of money in. So was that perfume bottle sent into the Russian embassy in diplomatic pouch, and some Russian spy here had to go out and stick it in a dead drop there as a backup? And then when it all went, oh my God, so better go clean it up. We don't need anybody finding it. So somebody went and threw it in the bin, because most things in the bin stay in the bin and go to landfill and you never see them again. And so again, you get into some rather bad luck that you get these two people who are actually rummaging through a bin. So that's my theory, is it was a backup supply.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, do you think the Russians were surprised that Bellingcat were able to access records and files and easily identify the two GRU guys? And that's from Sean.
You know, it's clear that the reaction that Bellingcat has in Russia is that it's really upset them. Okay, you know, I think that a large organization like these things, these state intelligence agencies, you know, they have their ways of working. They have lots of tradition. They have their reputation being a bit hidebound and traditional. Okay, and so have not really adapted their ways in the same way. The idea that, you know, I mean, one of the things that's been rumbled is a bunch of these guys all having the same number plate. Okay.
I noticed that this week. Was another thing about it.
Hundreds of these guys all using the actual known address of the GRU as their address on their driver's license, as basically as a wink, wink, nod, nod to the cops. So when they invariably get pulled over for driving their expensive car too fast, the cop just sees that address and says, "Oh, I better let this guy go." All right. So that's sort of there's a whiff of sort of institutionalized corruption in this. Okay. And there's a whiff of, you know, sclerotic laziness in the of these institutions not operating to the level of operational security you would necessarily need in this modern era. And you know, maybe not that even them not even getting grips with just how bad data protection is in Russia. You seem to be able to buy any database in Russia now for not a hell of a lot of money. So I'm not an expert in that, but it's clear that, you know, Bellingcat has rumbled some stuff and has, you know, caused some reactions.
For anyone watching, our friends the National Skeptics in the Pub had Elliot on earlier in the year doing all about this, how he found these GRU agents. So it'd be a good companion to watch to this. And I think they're all up on YouTube now. So
okay, I would highly suggest that, because Elliot can explain it much more than I can. I'm at the end of the day, I'm a chemical weapons guy. You know, I'm not an espionage guy. So
okay, I think we've got time for just one more question and then we'll have to wrap up, but there's a couple more that have come in, so maybe we'll get you to tweet them a reply or something else.
Okay.
So Nick C, do nerve agents like Novichok degrade in the body? So if they had died at home, would it be detectable?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, all the nerve agents react with water. Okay. Now, the extent and speed at which they react to water is highly variable, but your body is mostly water. Okay. So if you think somebody may have died from nerve agents, you know, you're not actually looking for much, if any, nerve agent in the body. You're looking for various types of decomposition products. Okay, the things the things that nerve agent molecule turns into, either, but most of the things react by water. Some bits of it will react with proteins and form these things called protein adducts. Now, this all presumes that you have a bit of an index of suspicion to look for some of this stuff. And this gets into quite exotic chemistry. This is not the sort of pathology that necessarily somebody's going to go, if somebody looks like they just died from a heart attack, you know, nerve agent exposure nerve agent exposure may not be the first thing you think of. Okay. With a dead body. Now, because there's two of them, two dead bodies in a house, different age, that is much more suspicious. Okay, and that would start kicking up a bunch of other things. Would have it eventually been rumbled? If it had just been Sergei Skripal, maybe not. The fact that there were two of them, the difference in age, that at least in the UK counterterrorism protocols, which I'm familiar with, really does kick off a couple of different, levels of suspicion. So if somebody really wants to hit me up on Twitter or something, I can certainly give some learned references on how this stuff works, from a post-exposure pathology standpoint.
Yeah, okay. We'll tweet you we'll send you the other couple of questions that we've not had time to get to. but we're going to have to wrap up with only a minute to go.
Okay.
So thank you very much. It's been fantastic and interesting, and yeah, great for me. I hope everyone else has enjoyed it as much.
Okay.
So hope everyone who's watching will join us next week for the Ferret and learn how to do investigative journalism in Scotland and have a look at how they do their sourcing and everything like that, similar to what Elliot has talked about in his talk, which I recommend people go and look out on YouTube. But thank you for joining us. Don't forget to buy Dan's book if you can. Oh, meant to ask, is it available on Audible as well?
Or? It's on Audible, it's on Kindle, it's on everything, you know.
That's good to know. So get it wherever you choose to buy it, whatever suits you best, and hit Dan up for an autograph if that's what you want. And we'll see you next week, same time and same YouTube channel. See you then.